So let's start right there. The fact that we're in another continuing resolution, how does that impact the Army?
Well, it's already affected the Army, Morgan. We had, over the last 45 days, we had to reduce our operations and maintenance expenditures by 2%. At present, from a modernization standpoint, so that means the buying power for commanders to conduct training is already dropped by 2%. On our modernization front, we're unable to execute 79 new production programs, as well as 37 production increases. So that's about $3.5 billion of buying power in modernization that's sitting frozen. Now, even if the budget deal the table gets slapped here before Christmas, that's about 90 days that manufacturers are either going out on risk or they have to wait until the funds are released. So from a readiness and modernization standpoint, we are losing momentum with every day that passes.
Yeah, we've seen defense spending increase over the past couple of years. It certainly had a big impact on readiness efforts, also has had a huge impact on aerospace and defense manufacturing. Given the fact that this is what we're talking about right now, is military modernization in danger of stalling out?
Well, we've been very blessed. The 18-19 budget deal increased the Army's defense top line by $22 billion. So we have been able to increase our readiness posture from about 2 brigade combat teams to north of 25 at the highest levels of readiness in just 2.5 years. A lot of that was funding, but it was also focus by leadership in our training plans. With respect to modernization, we have tremendous momentum. If you look at the defense sector, they've increased their research and development investments well north of 4%. So when we started this effort, it was down around inflation. When you get the industry excited and you get them to start investing into building prototypes, that's where you want to keep that momentum going. So we're working very hard across the river to get a deal done here right before Christmas.
Gotcha. All right, I have to shift gears to another topic that's been garnering a lot of news in recent days around the Pentagon right now. Navy SEAL review case in which the president got involved. Ultimately, the Navy secretary was fired. It does ripple out to the Army. It has some impacts on the Army, given the fact that there's been some recent presidential pardons, review processes underway within your service as well. But it also, according to some experts, raises some bigger questions. I want to read you this quote from Richard Danzig and Sean O'Keefe, former Navy secretaries, in the New York Times this week. It is very much the Navy's business and even military's business to maintain, as the military so often recites, and Mr. Spencer put in his final letter to the president, good order and discipline. In conducting their business, our military services are not and must not be commanded in support of political ends, as Mr. Trump was apparently doing here. I want to get your response to that.
Well, like all things, we have processes that we need to go through. With respect to the Navy, that was a process that there were some process fouls along the way. I don't have all the specific details associated with that. But with what we're trying to really focus on is go through deliberative processes to make the appropriate level judgments and get our soldiers through the various transitions.
Yeah, and as you just mentioned, across the Pentagon, there are very specific, detailed processes in place, whether it's order and discipline. You could also make the argument around contracting, which has been in focus recently, given everything going on with the JEDI contract award and now the recent bid protest by Amazon. How important are those processes to a service like the Army being able to do business on a daily basis, and is there any kind of risk that they could be eroded?
Well, like all these contracts for large procurements in particular, due diligence is incredibly important to maintain the objectivity in the selection. These have national security implications, massive implications to the taxpayers. So we are very judicious as we go about, very deliberate, and at times it becomes a little timely. What we've tried to work very hard on over the last several years is on our business practices so we can make better informed, faster decisions so we can maintain the speed of relevance with our adversaries.
I just mentioned JEDI, which is the big umbrella cloud contract for the DoD overall, but you've talked about migrating Army operations over to the cloud as well. What do you envision for that strategy, and how does it fit into the broader one for the Defense Department? So
the Army has initiated its cloud efforts over the last year. We've laid in on the upwards of $800 million across our 5-year Futures Defense Plan so that we can begin the inventory, the standards and protocols so we can migrate all of this data to a cloud architecture. How that will fit in with the overall enterprise architecture within the Department of Defense is something we're going to work out over the next 24 months.
And while we're on the topic of tech, lawmakers raising the flag about TikTok recently and Army use of that Chinese platform, social media platform. How are you assessing the risks there, and how does it speak to how the Army is thinking about data?
The Army ceased its utilization of TikTok immediately when it was brought to my attention. We've begun a review with Army Cyber Command on the potential vulnerabilities associated with that app, and like many others, I'll be receiving a brief from Army Cyber Command right around the Christmas holiday. Lastly,
I got to ask you about your new marketing campaign. Tight labor market right now, has that impacted recruiting?
Huge impacts. In the fiscal year 18, the Army missed on the active force by 6,500 people, which is pretty substantial, and feel those impacts for the next couple of years. So we went back and looked at how our approach with the American public, and we're focusing on 22 cities around the country. We changed the advertising firms, we changed leadership, and one thing in particular is all Army senior leaders are traveling around the country and engaging with civic leaders, mayors, superintendents of schools, directors of park and recreation, so that we can get civic level engagement to help us get in touch with 17 to 24-year-olds in the country and to be able to compete better in that space. But 3.6% unemployment has been very tough for us to recruit in this environment.